You're listening to Just a Dude podcast with your host, Nathan. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Let's roll. Welcome back to Just a Dude podcast. I'm your host, Nathan, and today we're diving into the world of fast-paced thrillers with a dude who's not just a writer, but a vet, a researcher, and a master of suspense. Please welcome John Bukowski, the mind behind the award-winning novels like Project Suicide and Checkout Time. John, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Nathan. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you too. And I mean, I think this is going to be a fun episode, especially for the listeners to find out, how you've gone from a veterinarian, a public health researcher, and to a medical writer, and now writing novels. So how do you go from a guy that's, fixing pets to writing thrillers?
Not exactly your typical author, fiction author path there. Actually, it's not as odd as it seems, because when I was growing up, and I still to this day, I had three great passions in school and in life. One is military history. One is English reading and writing. I always loved all my English classes, avid reader my whole life, starting off with things like Jules Verne and moving on into Elmore Leonard and Michael Crichton and all kinds of things, but always a reader. My parents really drove that into us. And then the third one was science. Well, I decided on a career in science. And when you do that, the other things have to kind of go on the, not so much on the back burner, but not on a path for advancement kind of thing.
Right. Kind of like an even keel
you want to
path.
Get to veterinary school. That's very competitive. And you have to do everything into your science grades and things like that. So really, I'm just circling back after a long career in science to one of my other loves, which is books, including thrillers.
And, for you, and you said that this came up with you, young, but was this always, a love of storytelling for you because of being promoted by your parents to, read and do things like that? So that's always been instilled with you?
Yeah, that's always been a big thing. I can remember summers in Detroit. We didn't have much money, but the library was always a good source of books and air conditioning.
Yep.
Which we did not have. And so I spent a lot of afternoons in the library reading Jules Verne and Arthur Conan Doyle and the Leather Stocking Tales and all kinds of adventure stuff. Half Space Trip, Will Travel, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that was very strong. And I've always had a love of movies too. And books and movies really go together.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
To this day, if there's a movie I really like, I'll dig up the book, even if it's like an old thriller from 1960 or something, and I'll read it after the fact, which a lot of people won't do.
Yeah,
and
usually, yeah.
I think the two really go together, and always love movies, always love books and reading.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, this is kind of off topic, but John, for you with books and movies, because I'm kind of the same way. If there's a good movie, then you know that there's a book, you usually go and seek out the book, read it. But from my experience, and I'm just curious about yours, have you found that generally you find the books to be better than the movies, or do you find the movies to be better than the books?
Generally, I found the movies to be better than the books. And that may be because a lot of times you see the movie first, and what you see first, you like the most.
Yep.
There's certainly exceptions to this. I think movies like Jaws and the book Jaws, both, bam, bam, really great. Exorcist, same kind of thing.
Yeah.
The Deep, lots of movies like that. I think The Godfather, I thought the book was great, and the movie's my favorite movie. So I think there are a lot of times when the movie and the book are as good, and I'm sure there's a lot of times when the book is better. But in my experience, I tend to like the movie more.
Yeah, and that's a great thing too, because I was thinking more of I got put into the Harry Potter genre for late in life, especially I was an adult, and those were long novels, really long novels, especially for younger folks. But there was so much more detail in those books than there was in the movie because of time, right? So in instances like that where you have maybe a series, I think sometimes the book gives you a little bit more, than the movie. But you gave great examples.
King's stuff, but there's not very many good adaptations of his work.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I'm in the school that Stanley Kubrick's The Shining was not a good adaptation. You couldn't get the depth of feeling between the son and father and the loss of that in a 2-hour movie. I don't even think Jack Nicholson tried.
Yeah.
But so a lot, yeah. For example, Stephen King and other long books, probably the movie you have to chop a lot. So yeah.
Yeah. And, for you, and then getting back into your experience, I know that, from what I've seen, that you've gone from like consumer handbooks to thrillers because they're a lot more fun, obviously. I would agree with that. But what's the most fun part about writing a suspense for you?
Probably the most fun is anything that surprises me, because I'm what they call a pantser. There are writers who are plotters. They make sure everything's all outlined before they start. And a lot of thriller writers, especially, go by the seat of their pants.
Mm-hmm.
You start with an idea, maybe a couple characters in your head, and you start working through it and writing. And a lot of times a character will do something you don't expect, or there'll be a plot turn, or somebody will get killed off that you didn't anticipate. That's a lot of fun, because
Yeah.
you know that if it's a surprise for you, it's going to be a surprise for the reader. And so when people tell me, wow, I wasn't expecting that, I go, yeah, neither was I.
Yeah. And that's awesome. If you could surprise yourself, I mean, that's a
Right.
good imagination, right?
Yeah. And likewise, I agree with, I forget the author's name. I saw him at a conference, but he's talked about, the worry of writing yourself into a corner, which as a pantser, especially, you worry about. He goes, I love it because then I have to come up with way out of the corner. And
Yeah.
that's usually the best part of the book. So there's a little bit of that too. When you think you've written yourself into a corner, there's usually sometimes it's a relatively simple thing that can happen that brings it all back together and makes it coalesce. You're back with the flow of the river. And that's a lot of fun too.
Do you
Frustrating
find,
at times, but fun.
yeah, I was going to say, John, when you're writing, do you find that you catch things, as you go throughout your process to say, you're going down a way and you're like, oh, wait a second, I said something different about the character back here. I got to change this a little bit. Have you
Yeah,
found yourself doing
and
that
that's
as
a
well?
relatively simple thing with continuity. It's like I've got to add a little foreshadowing, maybe a line or two earlier on, or change the way a sentence is written to reflect the fact that this guy, has a certain propensity or something like that. Those are relatively easy. Some can be more complicated. Sometimes you have to. I was working on a horror novel, which I'm still working on. Uh, Initially was a bloated like 120,000, 125,000 words. So I went back and I got rid of lots of points of view, and that was much more laborious. Got it down to 94,000. But that old saying, you got to kill your darlings. You got
Yeah,
to cut stuff that needs to be cut. But a lot of
exactly.
times the correction is relatively simple, and
Kind of like a
that's
quick
very
fix. Yeah.
appealing in and of itself.
Yeah, that's awesome though that you could keep that, keep that fluidity throughout the book and remember those things and recall, and when you notice them, fix them, because then that makes a better
Yeah.
experience for
Well,
the
plus,
reader.
you're not just going through it once. I mean, you're making like five. Once it's the first draft, and you got 4 or 5 more passes, and
Yeah, I
so you're
can.
going to pick up continuity errors, things like that. And the editor will pick up more, and the
I'm
publisher will
sure.
pick up more, and hopefully you'll all get together and get them all.
Yeah, exactly. And that's got to be a process though to get through all that and even, submit your work and then have someone pick it apart. But I have to assume you've done it a couple of times now, John, that you're just like you're used to it, right?
Right. Well, you're. I love editors. A good editor is worth their weight in gold. I've been fortunate. The publishers I've worked with, I've had very good editors. But your relationship with an editor can be a little bit like your relationship with a physical therapist. They
Yeah,
do you a lot of good, but it's painful
exactly.
because they tell you something's not right. And you're thinking you're done. And they're telling you something not right here. It needs a change.
Yeah, it keeps pushing that finish line out a little bit, right?
Right. I had a little bit of thinner skin when I started. And now I'm like, if I trust the editor, I'm like, great. What do you think we should do?
Yeah,
And
they
I
become
can
a
work
partner
with
at
him.
that point. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. And so let's talk about your novels a little bit. So you've got Project
Yeah.
Suicide, right? Which is one of them. And you won the Book Fest Award winner. And Checkout Time was another Book Fest Award winner. You also had a couple of other awards with that. But can you kind of give us an elevator pitch for
Sure.
what
I'll
each of
give you
those
a
are?
picture. This is the
Yeah.
cover of Project Suicide.
Ooh, I like that.
Was my first novel that came out in 2022. Not the first novel I wrote, first one that was published. And it's the story of how a cure for Alzheimer's disease is perverted into an assassination drug. Now high-profile politicians are killing themselves, and only a drunken genius can save the country.
Wow, I like that. That is a hook.
I particularly like that log line.
Yeah.
And I came up with the idea for that visiting my father-in-law. He passed away quite a few years ago now, but he had a mild case of dementia, and I would go to see him once a week. And it was a shame to see a brilliant Ford engineer reduced to not knowing if it's AM or PM by looking outside, that kind of thing. And so I'm thinking, boy, I know they're working on a cure, but what if, and that's an important thing for writers. Your brain gets going and you start saying, what if? What if they found a cure, but there was a side effect that was a problem? Well, what kind of side effect could you have? Well, a bad one would be you die, but that's
Yeah.
not like the book. You take a drug and you die. I mean, that's, but what if, and this is the one that really stuck in my head, what if you start to get better and your cognition comes back and everybody's excited, but with a sense of self comes a sense of self-loathing.
Yeah.
And you end up killing yourself. Wow, that stuck in my head.
Yeah.
And then the big what if was, what if you gave this to somebody who did not have Alzheimer's? They would still kill themselves, and you'd have an assassin's dream. You can't be blamed. The person killed themselves. It's incontrovertible.
Yeah.
So to me, that was the makings of, okay, that can be a good spy type, government type.
Heck yeah. That's a great, I mean, just to think of that. And it's funny that you went that way, John, because as soon as you said it, I was thinking about, you see these commercials on TVs like for antidepressants, right? And it says side effect may cause suicidal thoughts. And you're like, wait a second, why am I taking it then? But yeah, you kind of took that to the next level and said, not only, hey, here's a good thing.
It can cause suicidal, will cause suicidal thoughts.
Exactly. And you're sitting there going, do we want the Alzheimer's or do we want them to, off themselves? And it's like, then you take it another level.
So then I basically used it as a political assassination drug. And that's what the whole plot revolves around. What's happening? Why are these people killing themselves? And who's behind it all?
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. And then your other novel, Checkout Time, Checkout Time novel, right? Or checkouttimenovel.com is the website, but Checkout Time. And tell us a little bit about that one.
This is the cover for Checkout Time. It's one of my favorite covers. It's got a lot of contrast to it and the fire in the background. I like.
Yeah.
It's a story about a mysterious arsonist / bomber who is known only by his pseudonym, Conrad Hilton. And he's trying to extort money from hotel chains. Pay me or I bomb your hotels.
Yeah.
He's pursued by a beautiful FBI agent and a handsome government researcher based on yours truly, who he's pursued by them until he turns the tables and the hunters become the hunted. So I came up with that idea in a hotel room. This is well before I started doing fiction writing.
Yeah, that's fitting, though.
And I looked, and there was a little trap door in the ceiling, the suspended ceiling, obviously a service port of some kind. And I thought, well, you could put something up there. What could you hide up there? You could hide jewels, and you could have or drugs, and then you maybe have one type of thriller. You could put data tapes, and you'd have like a spy thriller. My brain immediately went to put a bomb because I'm a bit of a pyro. Yeah. When I was growing up, I liked anything that burnt or blew up, and I have hearing loss to prove it. So I thought, okay, put a bomb, but why? Well, there was a movie back in the 70s, which I always liked, which a lot of people had never heard of, called Roller Coaster, and had a great cast and very good script. And it was about a extortion bomber who was extorting money from not hotels, but from amusement parks. pay me or I'm going to bomb your rides.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was a great concept. So immediately it came to me, okay, extortion plot. Well, now the what is if, well, can you sneak something easily, like a bomb of size, into a hotel? And I thought, well, yeah, there's
Yeah,
no
absolutely.
PSA. You go up to the front
Exactly.
desk, you could have a backpack nuke on. They wouldn't
Yeah.
know, so that was the idea for checkout time. And I also
That,
have two other books which are
yeah.
currently on my jbukowskiauthor.com Amazon page. One of them is Bad Pennies, which is a sequel to Project Suicide.
Nice.
And the other one is about a serial killer who stalks social media. And it's called The Peeper. And this is the cover for The Peeper, which is also one of my favorites.
Well, I like that
I
one.
thought the cover designer did a bang up job with that. And
Absolutely.
so those are also available.
Yeah. I love that, John. But so for you, because obviously you like this thriller genre, kind of, suspenseful, it seems like. How do you, like, what motivates you to write these stories? Is there certain things that you've taken from in your life, or, is it just ideas that come to your head?
It's a combination. Really try to. I'm a big believer in write what you know. Not that I'm a serial killer or anything, although I did play one in the theater. But a lot of people tell you, no, that's bad advice. Write what you know, and then you still notice that Joseph Wambaugh wrote about cops, Michael Crichton wrote about medical stuff, and Stephen King wrote about drunk English teachers. So
Yep.
they're writing what they know. You save yourself a lot of hassle and add a lot of authenticity when you write what you know. So, for example, Project Suicide and Bad Pennies are kind of techno thrillers. They have a medical bent to them. And that was naturally in my wheelhouse, natural inclination.
Right.
So some of my ideas have that, but some ideas just come out of the blue. I keep a list of them on my phone and I'll go back to them when I'm looking for a new topic. And I'll say, oh, that was one I thought of 2 years ago, but that could go on to do this and this. And I go from there. But yeah, people will find a little bit of techie stuff in some of my novels, and I try to make that interesting.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing about doing research for novels in general is you've got to keep it interesting. You've got to keep it simple enough for people, and a little goes a long way. It's
Yeah.
like spice. It adds that authenticity where you can say, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about.
That's exactly what I was going to say, John.
I'm
Yeah.
going to believe the rest of the bullshit that he's telling me. Excuse my language.
Exactly.
Less the BS that he's telling me because we're making stuff up.
Absolutely. But when you do and put some of that research in there, it really shows that you're trying to give the reader the full experience to make it, even though they know it's a fiction novel, right? But they know that you're bringing them into it like it's real life.
Well, that was something Michael Crichton was so good with Jurassic Park and Andromeda Strain and stuff like that. He takes you behind the scenes a little bit. You feel like you're involved in the story. There's nothing worse than when somebody throws just out of the blue something that has no backing, no basis in fact or whatever, and it, that disrupts your belief in the artificial world they're creating. So,
it almost throws you off completely to where you're like, I'm not going to enjoy the rest of this book because you start fixating on that one little thing.
It can happen that way, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And with, so for the books that you've written, is this something that you see that you're going to continue to do? Like, are you going to, for checkout time, is there going to be a sequel to that? Or, or are you going to continue a series down that sort of line of things?
I don't know. I've only written one sequel so far. That's Bad Pennies, the sequel to Project Suicide. I'm branching out a little bit, getting not necessarily out of thrillers completely, but branching into some other stuff. I'm pitching a horror novel right now. You could call it a horror thriller, I guess. A lot of Stephen King's books are horror thrillers. Mm-hmm. I'm pitching that. And I've contracted with, and we're in the copy edit stage for an actual woman's fiction novel, which should come out later this year, called And a Child Shall Lead Him, about a elderly veterinarian whose wife dies, leaving behind a wish that they had a child. And he, through surrogacy, tries to fulfill that wish for her. And there's a lot of kind of soap opera complications with that. But so, yeah, I'm branching out into other areas as well. I think thriller is a kind of wheelhouse for me because I have enjoyed reading thrillers, and I've enjoyed writing thrillers and watching thriller movies and stuff. But I'm more than just thriller.
Yeah, that was going to be my question for you, John. Was do you prefer writing the thrillers? But I love the fact that you're branching out as well, because I've found that authors that have the ability to branch out into other genres or even subgenres, right? Like you said, a horror thriller, right?
Right.
It's still in the thriller genre, but you're bringing in that horror aspect, which is fantastic. Because if you can do that, I mean, that's just going to make your novels even more robust as you continue to grow and go throughout
And
things.
you look at my influences. I mean, there's several authors, but three of them are Elmore Leonard. I love his dialogue, and I love his crime fiction books and his westerns. Stephen King. I think he's the master of character, creating great characters. And Ernest Hemingway. And at least for King and Elmore Leonard, they branched out a lot. Elmore Leonard wrote thrillers. He wrote crime books. He wrote a couple that were more kind of softer, not really crime at all, like Out of Touch or Touched. That was one of his. And Stephen King, he went off into detective kind of books and things like that. So I think that's a natural inclination that, you may have a base, but you like to try other things. At least I do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like, I do this podcast because I like to feature what I call normal everyday people doing extraordinary things like writing novels, right? And, coming from a career, maybe trying something different. But then I do like a little news episode on Fridays just to try to keep
Right.
people
Yeah.
informed without, other things. But it's like, yeah, it's, the same thing. You like to branch out a little bit just to try new things. And the one thing that I've always said, and really as I get older in life, John, starts saying is you never know until you try. And if you try and it doesn't work out, you really didn't lose anything but a little bit of time.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, John, I want to switch gears just a little bit. I do a segment called Dude Q&A. So I'm just going to throw some real quick rapid fire questions at you.
Okay.
Nothing easy, nothing over the top, just to let the audience get to know you a little bit. But what was your favorite thriller author when you were growing up as a kid?
When I was really young, preteen, I really wasn't into thrillers per se. I was more into Jules Verne and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The first thriller author I can remember really liking was Frederick Forsyth. I read Dogs of War. I was probably like 15.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really a great book. And I followed that up and read The Day of the Jackal and Satan Bug and a couple others. Alistair MacLean, I always thought was good. The Guns of Navarone, Force 10 from Navarone. Let's see. Like I said, Elmore Leonard, I discovered him rather later. Some of his stuff is thriller. Some is just great crime fiction. James Grady with 6 Days of the Condor. I thought that was really good. That's basically the first ones I can think of.
That's awesome, though, because you've got it really proves that you definitely grew up reading, having a lot of inspiration. So that's fantastic. What's the scariest animal you've treated as a vet?
Any fractious cat. Cats are dogs. You got to watch their mouth, and if you got quick reflexes, you don't get bit. Cats, they can move their bodies in ways that are almost diabolical. I have one scar. I stopped veterinary practice in 1988. I have one scar left over. It's on my left hand, and it's a cat scratch, and I can still see it today. They have claws. They have teeth. They can move, bend into knots.
Yeah. And they're just unpredictable too sometimes, You never know what a cat's going to do. And so if you were to compare cats and dogs as well as most people do, they're totally different for sure.
They're very different.
That's funny. Plot twists that you're most proud of in your books.
Well, I'm not going to give any plot twists because but again, it's anything that surprises me. That I would come back to that, because if it's a surprise to me, and there's like a click in my head when I say I could have this happen. And it's like, that's the way to go. So if it's a surprise to me, it's going to be a surprise to the reader, and everybody's going to be happy.
Yeah, I love that. Coffee or tea when you're writing? Do you use either?
Actually, I'm a caffeine-free Diet Coke guy.
Oh, there you go.
I'm not a big fan of caffeine. It makes me jittery. I have coffee occasionally, and that's decaf. Tea, I can do a little iced tea, but usually that's decaf too.
Gotcha. So caffeine-free Diet Coke's your go-to.
Yeah, I'm kind of addicted to a substance to a substance that has no addictive substances in it.
Right. You know what, though? You're not the only person. My brother-in-law, and hey, Mike, if you're listening out there, he loves the Diet Coke too. So he's just like, for some reason, that's his go-to. So I get it. If you weren't writing thrillers, and we kind of already talked about this, but what genre do you think you would tackle next?
Well, that's what I said. I'm in the process of pitching a horror thriller, and I've already, like I said, contracted for my, if you want to call it, chick lit. Or I always think of it like a Hallmark movie. I love the Hallmark movies, and A Child Shall Lead Him. So that's basically where I'm going next.
Yeah, I love that.
Currently, I'm about halfway through a sequel to And a Child Shall Lead Them.
Oh, nice. So you've already got you got a book planned to come out, and ready for that, and then you already got the sequel working on it. So that's awesome. Out of all the books you've read, is there one book that you wish you would have written out of those books?
For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway. I think that is not only one of that's what he should have won the Pulitzer Prize for. Not for, Oh Man in the Sea is okay, but I thought Hemingway was a signature work, certainly the signature work of the Spanish Civil War. But it's got love, it's got action, it's got conflicting emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Yeah, I don't think I could have picked a better one than that either, John. That's a great choice. All right, last one. Best advice for any aspiring writers that we have out there.
Best advice I ever heard was read a lot and write a lot. You can't be, I hear people say, well, I don't like to read fiction because it will then influence my style. It's like, well, that's like saying, I don't want to learn how to put together a coffee table. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to learn, and you learn from reading good writers, especially in the genre or genres you want to write in.
Yeah,
so I think that's important. And then writing a lot. You can't. You're gonna hit roadblocks. You got to just bull through them. You got to write every day if you can. I always say you got to treat it like a business and like a hobby. Hobby, you do it because you love it or are driven to do it, and a business because you got to do it continually. You got to do it all the time.
Yeah, that's one of the things I always wonder about, since I've been doing this podcast. Will it ever feel like work? It's kind of like a hobby to me because I get this great opportunity to meet interesting folks like you who have done amazing things and then share that with the world, essentially. So it's just, for me, it's fun. But I don't know if it ever became feeling like work, and sometimes the back end stuff feels like work. You don't want to lose that passion for it. But yeah, I love how you said you got to find that balance too, right? Between your hobby and work.
It's because those people would say, I'm going to make $1 million doing it. Good luck.
Exactly.
It's not the kind of thing, it happens, but it's not the kind of thing you should count on.
When I had a publisher on here a while back, and when I found out that, selling 5,000 books, which doesn't sound like a lot of books, is a good release. I was like, really?
Absolutely.
That's it? You sit there and you think about that. You think about millions of books, like you said, Stephen King, all these big authors that sell millions and millions. But then you find out that no, a really good book sells about 5,000 copies, and that's really it.
Yeah. That's the average, like self-published books. I've never gone that route, but the average self-published book sells about 200.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's not huge like people think, that you write a book and you're just going to become famous. But, it's and I guess that's another question. And I guess we're breaking out of the dude Q&A, but just getting back to your writing, is that when you started writing, did you decide, was it hard for you to decide, hey, I'm going to look for a publisher versus self-publishing, or was a publisher like always the way for you to go?
Yeah, that was always the way for me to go. I started off by pitching to agents, and that's really tough. Agents are very selective. There is a limited number of big publishers now, and they're looking for specific things, often from younger writers, and agents it's not necessarily a matter of whether your work is good or not. Even good work, they're looking for reasons to turn it down because they're after the silver bullet, they're after the magic and the big contract and that kind of stuff. So then I started pitching to publishers who don't require agents. And that I was more successful at, because they're looking, again, they have less overhead. They're not the big, used to be the big 5 publishers. Now I think it's big 4 publishers, New York.
Yeah,
publishers.
really. Yep.
They're on a smaller scale and they can afford to take on people who maybe aren't going to, sell 1 million copies immediately kind of thing.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and so for you, and I know we talked about your writing process for a little bit, but just like for your start, when you get an idea, is it just like you said, you write things down and then do you move with that idea, or do you start with a character, or how do you usually like to start your writing process?
It varies. Oftentimes it's an idea, the what if comes up and there's an idea. Usually I can develop a character fairly quickly that I want to include, character or characters. I finished about 6 months ago a draft of a thriller where the main character is ex-military, but now he's kind of a seedy private detective
Yeah,
who's
yeah,
not, who's not afraid to not only bend the rules, but break the law. And he's driven by regret and his addiction to crack. So this is a troubled
yeah,
character. And I would
yeah,
have to say
definitely.
that this character actually rose first. And then I started doing a story around that. But with Project Suicide, Checkout Time, the ideas came first. And the same with The Peeper, I would say.
Yeah, so you built the idea and then, shaped it around that, built your
Right.
characters off of that idea and things and just let it grow up organically,
Yeah,
right? Because you're
I
pantsing, right?
let it
Is what
go
you're saying.
organically.
Yeah.
There's some danger in doing that, but it's also, I think, more fun. And it's a good way to do a thriller. If I was doing cozy mystery, for example, where you needed to make sure you knew where the clues were, where the red herrings were and stuff, I'd be plotting it out, outlining constantly. But for thrillers, I think surprise is a good thing.
Yeah, even for yourself, like you said, when you surprise yourself with something that you come up with, that's even better because if it surprises you, it's going to surprise the
Yeah.
reader. Yep, that's excellent. Well, so John, we talked about a couple of your books, but what is next for you? What's your next one's coming out, and any other awards that are in your crosshairs currently?
Well, like I said, and I'm going to show the cover of The Peeper again because I just love it. The
Yeah,
Peeper's out there. Anybody, jbukowskiauthor.com. I think you'll like it. And Bad Pennies for those of you who have read Project Suicide. One thing that I'm excited about is I go to Killer Nashville at least every year for the past couple years. And I have a collection of short stories. I have 21 published short stories, of which 19 are in this collection called Shadows and Dust. And that is a finalist for the Claymore Awards in the
oh,
area of
nice.
fiction collections. And so I'm excited about that. In a few weeks, I should hear if it's won gold. So that's interesting. And A Child Shall Lead Him. Hopefully coming out in the fall. It might be a Christmas release. I don't know. It depends on what the publisher wants to do with it. But that's going to be coming out. And I put The Peeper in for a few awards, and we'll see if it garners any gold there. But that's
Yeah,
what I'm working on. And that's something people got to realize is they say, well, what's your next book? Well, I'm going to write it tomorrow and then it'll be on shelves. You've
yeah,
always got stuff in the pipeline. There's drafts of books that you've done that you're waiting to do another draft or waiting to get to a publisher. There's books you've started and you maybe only halfway through, that kind of stuff. Short stories to fill in the gaps when you're waiting between things. It's a constant process. There's a pipeline and you got to keep it filled.
yeah. I have to imagine, especially if you're, and I have to imagine since you're, doing this now, do you consider this like a career for you, or is this more still of
Yeah,
a hobby?
this is like I said, I consider it both, but this is what I do now. I retired from medical writing. I did veterinary medicine first. Then I went back to school and got my master's and PhD in public health and did that for about 20 years, public health research. Transitioned from that to medical writing as a contractor and transitioned from that to fiction. And that's what I do now is I write fiction.
Was that transition from medical writing to fiction, was that hard for you? Or was it just kind of the same, just using different thought, parts of your brain, so to speak?
Well, even when I transitioned to medical writing, I was doing things like writing journal articles for people, for companies and stuff. But I also tried as much as possible to do more consumer literature, website content, radio scripts, some video scripts, things like that. So I started getting into the more creative aspects of it. And so that helped the transition. But you also, it is a bit jarring because in medical writing, in technical writing, the whole idea is be clear, get to the point. And in fiction, if you get to the point, you're writing microfiction.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to have 5 pages,
words.
right? Yeah.
You've got to build the landscape. You've got to build the characters. You have to weave the plot lines. So that took some getting used to early on.
Yeah, I have to imagine, because you're literally painting a picture, right, John? I mean, with words. Yeah.
Or you can think of it. I've heard it described as you've got a movie going on in your head, and you want the reader to see the same movie.
Yep.
So
that's a great way to put it.
Then we come back to this connection between movies and books, which is I think there's most fiction writers, especially thriller writers, are also big movie fans.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with your, you being a fan of both novels and movies, and we talked about your favorite novels, but is there a favorite, I don't want to say favorite movie, because that's probably like asking who your favorite kid is, but is there a favorite genre of movies that you prefer to watch?
Again, I love sci-fi. I love horror. I love thriller. Some of my favorite, like crime fiction. Some of my favorite movies are like Manhunter, which was the Thomas Harris's Red Dragon, the first making of it, which is a fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, with William Peterson. Heat, also a Michael Mann movie. I love Michael Mann as a director. Heat, Thief, all great movies. 3 Days of the Condor, fantastic movie. Day of the Jackal. The Dogs of War with Christopher Walken.
Yep.
Forbidden Planet with Leslie Nielsen and Robbie the Robot. Some of the 50s sci-fi movies I just love. So Westerns, like I'm right now watching One-Eyed Jacks, which was Marlon Brando's only directorial thing. And I think it's a masterpiece. It's wonderful. And so it depends on the genre, but I have favorites in each genre. The Godfather, that's probably my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah. Do you like all 3 of the Godfather movies, or is there a specific one you like the best?
Well, I'm like most people. I like the first 2, and the third one was, if I hadn't seen the first 2, I might say it was okay. Yeah. But I didn't really care for the third one.
Well, yeah, I'm the same way. I loved the first 2. I thought that, as far as making a movie and then doing the sequel, I think they did a fantastic job. The third movie wasn't bad, but, again, like you said, compared to the first 2, it was bad.
There's also, I just got the Blu-ray for what they called The Godfather, a novel for television. They showed it, I think, in the 80s or early 90s, where they took the 2 movies, 1 and 2, and they put them in chronological order and added additional material.
Wow.
So now it starts with young Vito Corleone in Sicily.
And you just go all the way through.
And then it goes all the way through to Michael in Nevada and stuff like that in chronological order with extra scenes added.
Wow.
And I saw that in the 80s, and I loved it, and I finally got the Blu-ray of it. I'm looking forward to watching it.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, because it'll give you a whole new perspective to see it all in chronological order,
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, John, this has actually been fantastic and fun. I love having you on, but I want to be cognizant of our time and everything that's going on. Is there anything else that you want to share with the listeners today before we call a wrap on the show?
No, I just want to say, one thing I want to say is people read your books and they say, I really liked it, which is great. I mean, I hope people do. But if you really like it, leave a review on Amazon. It means a lot to authors, and it helps with the placement of the book and all kinds of stuff. And it doesn't take but 5 minutes. So, if you like an author, any author, me or somebody else, leave an Amazon review. It helps them out. And just tell people who want to read a lot, write a lot.
Read a lot, write a lot. Yep.
All my books are on jbukowskiauthor.com. All one word.
That was my next question, John. jbukowskiauthor.com. And also we can find you on amazon.com as well, right, John?
Right. Well, that will take you right to my Amazon page, jbukowskiauthor.com. And it has all 4 books on it, currently on it. Hopefully we'll hear good things about Shadows and Dust in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just so you know, John, as well, I'm going to have a guest page for you on my website at justadudepodcast.com. So all your links, if you provided me with any social media or anything like that, will all be there as well. So, yeah, there'll be multiple ways for our listeners to get a hold of you. But yeah, John, thanks again so much for sharing your experiences with us, your writing experience. Tell us about your books. Again, thank you for joining us here today.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Hopefully I can be on again when I got more books to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for this episode of Just a Dude Podcast. If you liked this episode and it resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next show, and leave a review to let others know what you thought. Until our next episode, stay chill and keep being dudes and dudettes. I'm Nathan with Just a Dude Podcast.